And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Rex the Tex, who writes, "Hey, John and Rob. Okay, we all know the whole thing with Warner Brothers putting their movies on HBO at the same time as the movie theaters turned out to be a complete disaster. But it looks like it was worse than we thought. There is a story in Variety that says the move was one of the big reasons AT&T decided to get rid of Warner. How big was this, and will the sale fix those burnt bridges?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Rex. And yes, of course, the big news in the entertainment world, I mean, other than the fact of, Discovery being the player in it, the last week or so has been that AT&T, which only purchased WarnerMedia a couple of years ago, Rob, is selling off WarnerMedia. They don't want to be in the entertainment game anymore and all that kind of stuff. Now, one of the other big stories of the past number of months has been Warner Brothers' decision to take all their 2021 movies and release them day and date on HBO Max the same time they come out in theaters. A move that was slaughtered by filmmakers, their partners, Hollywood insiders. Everybody hated the move that they did. And basically they burnt their bridges with their top highest profile talent. Christopher Nolan slaughtered them in a thing that he wrote. Denis Villeneuve wrote an opt-in piece, I believe it was for Variety, just desecrating the decision and how much he hated them for what they're doing and all this kind of stuff. Guys like James Gunn and other filmmakers have come out and said, yeah, this company's basically dead to me now. This company's dead to me now. Well, it turns out that according to some sources and reports, that had something to do with the fact that AT&T decided to sell off WarnerMedia. Now, this comes to us from CBR, who's quoting Variety and writes, "Variety explains, industry sources say that the strategic move that made such a splash last December when WarnerMedia at Killar's direction," of course, that's Jason Kilar, who is the current CEO of WarnerMedia, opted for a simultaneous release in theaters and on HBO Max for Warner Brothers' 2021 movie slate, is seen as a major misstep because it is shaping up to cost the studio over $1 billion in lost revenue, talent profit participation payments, and in high license fees paid for the movies from HBO Max. Unless the pace of HBO subscriber additions picks up significantly in the coming months, the high cost of the movie content for the streamer will be hard to justify. All right. So basically what they're saying here is this. That whole move was a big mistake. And Rob, listen, you got to understand that, I think people need to understand that a deal worth $43 billion is not something that gets proposed and then executed in a week. Obviously, the Discovery people and the AT&T people have probably been talking for a period of time and formulating an idea. What if we took WarnerMedia off your hands? They've obviously been talking about this for a long time. The discussions maybe even predate the decision by Jason Kilar to put Warner movies on HBO Max the same day they come into theaters. But, Rob, all the other pundits out there, and you and I, all know people at Warner Brothers, and we've all heard the same thing. Nobody wants to work with us anymore. Like that the temperature in talent relationships, we're talking writers, directors, producers, actors, things like that. The atmosphere surrounding their talent relations has gone sour ever since that announcement was made. And it was seen, now what I've been told is the company at AT&T, whereas they thought getting into the entertainment business, owning WarnerMedia, this is going to be great, having all the highest profile filmmakers out there bashing your company was seen as embarrassing and something that they just weren't happy with at all. Was that move the exclusive reason why AT&T decided to part ways with WarnerMedia? No, I probably not at all. Right. I mean, they just weren't getting the financial returns. They were getting offered $43 billion. Their shareholders were going to get shares, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different reasons. But do I believe this report that the incredible backlash from talent and everything over the decision to put movies on HBO Max day and date had something to do with it? Oh, hell yes, I believe this report. I absolutely believe this had something to do with it. This thing, nothing disillusioned the shareholders at AT&T more about becoming owners in WarnerMedia than that whole backlash. It was embarrassing. And the people of Warner Brothers were embarrassed, and they still haven't gotten over it. So the reason? Probably not. A reason? I believe so. Anyway, Rob, you see this report. What do you make out of it?
Well, there's not ever just one reason things like this happen. But I think overall, WarnerMedia wasn't, say, as successful as they wanted it to be. And I think a lot of it had to do with the time that it happened. I mean, the pandemic obviously threw a wrench in everything. And then you had everybody jockeying for position. You had somebody like Toby Emmerich, who suddenly has been working on his career. He's produced over 100 movies. He's written a film in Frequency. He's working his way up. He's running the studio, basically. And then suddenly people come in to usurp his position. So there had to be a lot of Game of Thrones-esque backbiting and jockeying for maneuvering for power. And it was his idea, from what I understand, he presented the idea to WarnerMedia saying, let's do this day and date kind of release strategy. And while I think at first it might have seemed a reasonable idea, I don't think it really worked out as well. I mean, Godzilla versus Kong did good, but maybe it would have done better. Maybe these other films would have done, who's to say? So I just think that it was a failed experiment. AT&T realized they already had a huge debt load before they picked up WarnerMedia, and they were just not making the kind of money they wanted to. In fact, I'm sure they were hemorrhaging money. And they people that have technology companies are dealing with reality. Like, we have this many cell phone towers, we sell this many phone, subscriptions. They deal with tangible things that they can look at on a spreadsheet and understand where money comes, where money goes, and how much things cost. But the entertainment business isn't quite like that. There's a lot of intangibles in terms of what you're going to make for this, and you can't really pinpoint. It's very risky. And for a company that probably isn't used to dealing with that kind of, everybody thinks they want to get involved in the movie business until they actually have to make and distribute movies. And then it's a very different thing. And I think that's what happened here. I think that AT&T, they saw that we don't know how to manage this kind of a business. We got to get out while we can. And I think that's what happened. And what you did was you had another company that is an entertainment company that creates in Discovery. We create content. We put it out. If the content is good, it's successful. We know exactly what we're doing. So it made sense to combine these. They're complementary companies. And I think it works out a lot better than a company like AT&T, which doesn't know anything about the entertainment business, that thought, well, we're building the infrastructure to send content everywhere. So why not control the content as well? But that doesn't make any really sense when you start to think about it. So it was not a very good fit.
Right. Now, some moron in the live chat is writing, why doesn't John give this? Disney does the same thing too. Why doesn't John give the same energy to Disney? Well, because, idiot, I spent like 2 or 3 full videos bashing on Disney last week about all the moves Bob Chapek has been making. So if you're going to be ignorant, educate yourself a little bit first. On top of all that, Disney is not doing the same thing that Warner Brothers did. Warner Brothers, carte blanche, put out a flat thing that said all of our movies, 2021 movies, every single release we have, we're going to put straight to day and date, which, number one, they did not consult with the filmmakers about. Most of the filmmakers found out their movies, which they made under the understanding that it was going to get a theatrical release and had bonus money attached to that, without being informed. They found out later through the news. They found out through the news that their films are being thing. Legendary Pictures, the financiers of Godzilla versus Kong, the people who put up the money to make Legendary, they didn't know until the day of the announcement. And so their potential money got pulled out from under them. What Disney has done, which I also don't like, and I've said very publicly that I don't like, Disney is cherry picking a couple of projects to experiment with day and day release with. Normally movies that don't turn out to be very good. We saw what happened with Mulan. We saw what happened with, what was the kids book that Kenneth Branagh directed? Artemis Fowl. Artemis Fowl turned out crap, all that kind of stuff, turned out crap, things like that. So but Disney also, we found out from the directors being interviewed, the directors were consulted months in advance. The companies were consulted months in advance. They didn't surprise anybody. They didn't pull a thief in the night, kind of sneak behind people's backs and announce to the world, we're putting your movie on TV, even though that's not what you agreed to do. So no, moron. It is not the same thing. And yes, moron, I have given Disney a hell of a lot of grief. Actually, I spent a lot of my week last week trying to propel all these people who are now insistent I'm just a big giant Disney hater, that I'm just out to get Disney and I hate Disney and I'm just a Disney hater. And I had to spend most of my week last week kind of fighting those people off.
It's funny, I always get accused of being a Disney shill for my love of the MCU.
Dude, it depends on the day, right? Like
Yeah.
if I'm talking about Man of Steel, all these people write in and say I'm on Warner Brothers payroll. If I talk about Avengers, I get all these people write in and say I'm on Disney's payroll. So like everybody is just completely stupid and nobody just understands, oh, you can like some things and not like it. But listen, just because I love Warner Brothers doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize when I think that they're doing something stupid. Just because I love Disney doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize them like I did heavily last week when I don't think they're doing something stupid. That's my job. My job is to just call it as I see it. And yeah, so yes, they are two very, very different things. They are the Disney situation, which is bad enough, is a very different situation from what WarnerMedia did for a lot of different reasons. Now, look, they're now saying, WarnerMedia, that come 2022, it's back to business as usual. Discovery has already said that they are committed to the theatrical experience, so we'll see what happens with that. But, Rob, one of the big things that always confused me, too, is that, you know, if you had put Godzilla vs. Kong in theaters exclusively, number one, it probably would have made $200 million more.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, then once you did launch it on HBO Max a month and a half, 2 months later, it would have had a much bigger impact with its arrival on HBO Max because now everybody knows about Godzilla vs. Kong. It had this big theatrical run and made all this money. People are excited. And then it comes to HBO Max and people get excited about signing up and watching on HBO Max. Instead, what they found is they put it day and date up on HBO Max and what was it? 2.1 million people watched it.
Something like that.
Something like that. Whereas if it had had a full theatrical run and then you dropped it on HBO Max, day one on HBO Max, I guarantee you would have had 50% more. It would have had 3.5, 4, 4.5 million viewers probably when it first launched. And that's what the people at Warner Brothers are starting to figure out. And so it's a wild, wild thing here. Rob, they say that come 2022, this whole thing that has caused them so many problems with AT&T, caused them so many problems with the talent relations. They're saying that come 2022, they're going back to business as usual. Do you believe that?
Okay. I think that what we're seeing now is places are really managing, they're really getting management of this COVID epidemic down. Obviously, California, we've seen our deaths and infection rates drop precipitously. I do think that by 2022, things are going to get more or less back to normal. I don't know if we're going to still be social distancing in theaters at that time. I think as more and more people get vaccinated, maybe not. It was weird because we've been now, John, I've seen 2 movies in the last week. One was with you. One was on my own. And obviously the theaters were certainly not full. But when you see movies like Godzilla vs. Kong grossing $400 million worldwide, you're on the way, you're heading back to normalcy. And I think we will eventually. I mean, hell, they even came out of the Spanish flu. It took them, 2.5 years, but eventually the world emerged from it. And I think we are going to get back to normal. And I think by 2022, business as usual will be pretty much, back in the swing of things, assuming that there's no crazy variant, that comes out and reignites the pandemic. But yeah, I do. I think we're going to come out of it. Long story short, yes. Yes, I do, John, to answer your question.
All right, guys. Question is for you. What do you make of this whole thing? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.